Well, I know there was a hole in the road because there was a bounce and my chain slipped off and I lost control in a split second and fell down.
The trials and tribulation of the 2005 Tour de France were there for all to see when David Zabriskie came crashing down in yesterday's team time trial. But it's not to say it's the end of Team CSC. This is the headquarters for the police academy here in France. It's also the finishing line for stage 5 of the Tour de France in the town of Montargis. Well, a record number of 10 Australians started this tour last weekend. They're all still in the race, and I guess it's another indication of the growing Aussie influence on the roads of Europe. Surely an all-Aussie pro team can't be that far away. The rise of Australians on the pro cycling circuit hasn't gone without notice. Since Neil Stevens' unlikely stage win in 1997, the numbers have steadily increased.
Yeah, it's good. We've got 10 Aussies. I mean, we're consistently year after year now backing up with between 6 and 10 guys on the start. So I think the years to come, you'll even see that number grow again. But it's good to see that number of Aussies on the start.
I think it says a lot for our cycling in Australia, and particularly the programs of the government or the cycling programs that have got the guys into the pro ranks who can come to the level and beat the tour. And small population like Australia's, yeah, to have 10 guys here is great.
Speak to any European-based Australian and they'll tell you the dream of an all-Aussie pro team may not be far away.
It'd be really nice to see. I think it's a dream of a lot of people. I think it'd be really hard to organise because these guys are they're big leaders of big teams, and I know they get together at one time a year at the World Championships, and then every 4 years at the Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games. It certainly is great to have them all together again, but it's a dream. I don't know whether it's achievable, and I'm sure we'd be up there with the best of them if we could do it.
Mate, it's been ready for 5 years. It's just someone who wants to step up with the money and invested in cycling, and we've got the riders and we've got the personnel. It's just a matter of money, that's all it is.
What is required is an annual operating budget in excess of $15 million. US Postal received worldwide exposure courtesy of Lance Armstrong's exploits. Such an investment could return similar results for a committed corporate backer from down under.
It's normal, I suppose. Many years ago, pro cyclists weren't even heard of. I think Phil Anderson was the major mover as far as that goes. Then he made put cycling on the map in Australia. From there to have 1 or 2 Aussies in the Tour de France to get up to now where we've got regular 8 or 10, that's a great thing. And I think that the commercial world's starting to see that there is a benefit in sponsoring bike riding teams. When you've got teams like Liberty, like Cofidis and such that are spending more than 10 million euros a year, well, it's a sign that it is a feasible study.
And a special mention must also go to Luke Roberts, who sits in 17th place on the general classification. He's the highest ranked Australian after 4 stages, and so that justifies his transformation from an Olympic gold medal champion to a road professional, not to mention justifies his place in Team CSC. Let's have a look at the course for stage 5. It's from Chambord to Montargis. It's a distance through the centre of France covering more than 180 kilometres. And as we look at the profile, it's all flat terrain, so incentive for the sprinters yet again. Plenty of colour and movement prior to today's start, despite the news that filtered through that Paris had lost its bid to host the 2012 Olympics. As Discovery Channel set the tempo on the road in the early part, Lance Armstrong appeared comfortable in yellow, although he started without the Golden Fleece as a mark of respect to David Zabriskie's misfortune yesterday. Here's Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
A lovely view from the helicopter there. The whole peloton down there. We have to announce the first man to give up the Tour de France today. We were going a long way with the complete field, though. It's a long time since we've reached day 5, and the man who has been abandoned is Constantino Zabaya. He was at the bottom of the classification, or pretty near too, so he might have been ill, but he's climbed off during the day today, so that's sad for him. First man to leave us in the Tour. Meanwhile, at the front of the peloton, Team Discovery Channel hanging on, controlling the pace here. Lance will just keep his team working. They're just talking about how they're going to keep this pace up. They're not going to chase down the leaders yet. Still 100 kilometres or 62.5 miles to ride.
I think if I was the team manager of Juan Antonio Fletcher right now, I'd just have a quick word in his ear and tell him just to ease off a fraction and wait for the 3 guys behind, because they've actually got a very large advantage over the front end of the main field. And to succeed on a day like this, you're much better off being in a breakaway of 3 or 4 riders than trying to do it on your own. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher, who's holding on to a 1 minute and 11-second advantage over a group of 3 chasers, and 5 minutes and 16 seconds over the main field, which contains all of the major jerseys: King of the Mountains, the green jersey of points classification, Tom Boonen, and of course the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. Most of the riders from the north of from Spain do not enjoy going up to races like Paris-Roubaix, but this man really does seem to enjoy it. He finished 13th in Paris-Roubaix last year, but this year was very close to getting himself the win and crossed the line in 3rd place. Unfortunately came up against a very fast Tom Boonen on that occasion, with George Hincapie getting himself 2nd. But that was a very good week up in Belgium for Juan Antonio Fletcher, 2nd in Gent-Wevelgem and 3rd in Paris-Roubaix. So you can see now that the 3 riders here who have been halfway across the gap for an awful long time are just about to make the junction with Juan Antonio Fletcher. And I think now they'll start to hold that advantage of the main field over the next few kilometers or so. But I have a gut feeling, as I did yesterday, that the breakaway is not going to succeed today. They may well have to wait until tomorrow to have a chance to break the stranglehold of the sprinters.
A lot of CSC riders are involved. In fact, it looks like nearly the whole team is here. And that's Basso on the right of the picture. Well, we'll have to look at this again, because I'm not sure what happened here, but the whole team must have been touching wheels together. This is almost like the team title. Is that Guerini as well there?
That was Guerini. It was right in the middle of the bunch there too. They swamped across the road there. It was I'm not sure who went down first. In fact, it was a Phonak rider who went down, and amazingly enough, the team CSC stopped and waited for Ivan Basso, but they didn't wait for Zabriskie yesterday.
It's clearly who they fancy for the big finish. There's Guerini getting away. He's a very powerful ally to Jan Ullrich, but nobody waits for him because he's a helper and not a leader, so he's going to have to try and sort it out for himself. There he is, a long, lonely road. There are a few riders around that will get together to help out. But what I couldn't understand and found quite amazing was it looked almost like a team time trial crash of yesterday. There must have been 5 or 6 CSC men there. Well, amazing, Paul. We have 6 riders here from CSC, and it looks rather ironically that Dave Zabriskie wasn't involved in that one.
Well, I think Dave Zabriskie was maybe riding a little bit further up the main field. There's the peloton. I think just after the feeding station, the hammer won't be down that much. They're probably only riding along now at around about 25 miles an hour. So very quickly, Team CSC. And you see all the team cars over there on the right-hand side. So Team CSC and Ivan Basso will be quickly making contact. There they are. The best thing to do now is get up to the front as quickly as possible.
Well, they're back. There's the chief referee keeping an eye on them. Guerini picked up the CSC chain. He is now back. Jens Voigt has decided he will now take his feeding bag as he's hit the feeding station, but it happened back in the town.
Well, I think, you see, the feeding station actually is over 2 to 3 kilometers.
Yeah.
Some teams deciding to hand up bags in the early part of the feeding zone, and some opting to hand them up in the latter part of the feeding zone. So that accident could have been caused by somebody swerving in the main field because he'd only seen his team helper at the last moment.
Well,
Look at this.
Oh, this is dangerous.
This is what the problem was.
No, this is a flashback. This is another situation. This is Kurt Attler-Arvesen, who was involved in that crash. These are dangerous moments in the big pack of the Tour de France, and this is so easy to ruin your tour by something stupid happening, as the Elis Beliris boys are still taking on their feed. It's a time to be in the leading breakaway today, I think. CSC having a rough couple of days. Now, as we look over here, we find the race again. They're flying across the surface now. 49 kilometers to go, inside 50. The speed they're going, barely an hour of racing left. So they're up on schedule today. Still the clouds hover, but the roads stay dry. These are the leaders, 4 of them. Whatever the differences was earlier between Fletcher and Camesso, they seem to have settled them, because now they're all working together as we race now into a very, very busy town here.
Well, that was the only way, Phil, in fact, to try and get themselves together. This is Gien. As you can see, the sprint is at 48 kilometers to go to the finish, and they needed to get over those differences between themselves, Phil, because at the end of the day, the important thing really was to make sure that they worked as a unit to try and survive. And they're not doing a great job, but they are surviving. They're holding on to a 2-minute advantage over the main field, and there are about 4 different teams at the front of the peloton chasing now, thinking about how they can get it together for their sprinters. 500 meters to go to the sprint.
500 metres. It looks like Fletcher decides he wants this. He won the first one when he was on his own. The others joined him at Aubigny. But maybe they're just going to keep on working together, because now they're beginning to think at 48 kilometres to ride, they might just have a chance. So there's no reason for them to battle this one out. They don't feature in the green jersey points competition. They don't feature in the overall. Although having said that, Bedrogi knows at the moment he remains the virtual leader of the Tour on the road. There is a 6-second bonus for the first rider under the arches of the Belgian flags as we race here through the heart of France. And here comes little old Salvatore Camesso, and he's decided to go for it, and they're going to have to chase him down. So Camesso goes over the line ahead of Bedrogi, Karlstrom and Fletcher.